Alakazam, as I speak, I create. What was I thinking about? Holy fetch. The only possible reason you would make and create role models unto yourselves is simply because they have traits that you wish to acquire. So what does that mean? Are role models just another form of idol worship, of Baal worship? Or are they actually good? And who should our role models be? Over the past couple weeks, and if you clicked on this video, I'm sure you have questions or you have a thought in your mind, in the back of your mind. Does that make any sense? Not 100% sure, but what I mean is that role models are not necessarily all that you really understand them to be. And sadly, in a day like this, there is such thing as false prophets, and there is such thing as the behavior and activity of idol worship. And quite frankly, in some senses of the way, you might find that you are worshiping idols of your own. Now, I could go into a lot of things, all the different types of idol worship that we participate in today, but I'm going to focus fully on role models. Is it okay to have role models? I just want to start and talk a little bit about whether or not a role model is fine to have. Now I'm going to level and I'm going to say that role models are generally pretty good to have. Many of us have role models in our lives. That could be a father, or it could be a friend, it could be an influencer on social media, right? Is there any point when those role models become idols and prophets to us? That's clearly not good. So many of us men, even women, struggle with our own image. We struggle with whether or not we actually feel confident in our abilities or who we are, or just things like that, right? How we dress, how we style our hair every morning. In this day and age, I've seen a lot of duplicate Taylor Swift. A lot of people who are trying so much to be like Andrew Tate or other people like that, right? They dress like them and things like that. And I've even found myself falling into habits similar to this. Now, I have no issue with liking someone because they have qualities or traits that you desire in your own life. I think there's no issue with that. In fact, it is so wrong for somebody to hate somebody for liking things about a character that they may not agree with, right? Andrew Tate's a really big example of this. Me, myself, there are things I like that he says. And there are also things I don't like that he says, right? It's the same thing with everybody. It would be completely sheepish and childish to look at someone and say, oh, I like this one thing, and everything is now valid to me because of that. Or I like this person, so everything is now valid that they say. It's like playground activity, right? You see one kid who's kind of a little bit more popular, maybe has a slightly cooler Bakugan. I don't know if any of you guys remember those. Has a cool Bakugan, whatever, with the G power of 603, or I don't remember how that all goes, but it's things like that. And suddenly they are now, everything that they say and do is all fact. I do have an issue with that. Now I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but you kind of get the point. I'm going to kind of jump to the next thing. A role model is simply an example. It is an example. A role model is an example of who you want to become. Naturally, if you do watch and consume a lot of content from people like Andrew Tate or Taylor Swift or like even like YouTubers and like Casey Neistat and people like that, right? If you consume a lot of content like them, you are going to naturally start adopting traits and behaviors that they also have in their lives. It's pretty easy to see where people get their inspiration from or who inspires certain people, because you can see it in their actions, their behaviors, their characteristics. It's the same thing like when you hang out with a group of friends, suddenly you all find that you start dressing the same. It's like a whole entire copy and paste movement, right? Where everybody is just kind of the same person, just with slight different variations in character. I'm not going to jump on the horse and just say that all of that is wrong, because when I think of other people, like, for example, I think like Jesus Christ, I feel like adopting characteristics and behaviors of him are positive things. I think where it becomes an issue is when you start to obsess over someone and in the process, you lose yourself. You lose purpose. You lose that sense of identity that you did have. Ultimately, there has to be some sort of way to be yourself and at the same time acquire the traits and attributes that some of your role models have. There has to be a way. If you've ever read the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, you'll find that there's a lot of things that he says. Actually, if you've even heard like the audiobook, there's some podcast parts in between each chapter that in which he kind of talks about his experiences. David Goggins, if you look at his life, you'll find that he's a great example of becoming what his role models were. He's a great example of someone who picked their role models wisely to leverage their goals, their dream identity, right? You'll see that he didn't have a lot of positive role models growing up initially. And he was in a lot of situations that he could not change. I think that crafted and molded a pretty good idea for himself of what he wanted to become and what he wanted to do with his life. With an abusive father and his parents who are in a relationship that is quite frankly dying, and just how his whole family's just falling apart, just ripping by the seams. If you really analyze his past, you start to recognize why it is that he became who he is today. If you don't know David Goggins, he's a man who will push past the boundaries of mind to accomplish physical challenges and trials. And he's so relentless that every time he failed, he just got right back and kept doing it. Seemingly impossible tasks, and he accomplished all of them. He ran a marathon with broken shins. So if that doesn't give you an idea of who he is, I don't know what will. But for David Goggins, his true role models were the Navy SEALs. It all makes sense. It's like in process of coping with trial and in the errors of his parents, he started to seek becoming a stronger man, a more resilient man, a man who could control his mind, which his father could not. Get into the Navy SEALs and realize that he has no other option. He goes back as a 300-pound man to a family who was completely broken. What other option does he have for his life? So of course he's going to pursue and seek after positive role models, putting in all the effort and sweat and blood and tears that he possibly can every single day, failing over and over and over again, striving to be this persona of the Navy SEALs. Tough, strong, resilient, and capable. And in the end of the book, in the podcast part, as he's talking about these experiences he's had, he mentions that a lot of people try to be just like him, try to replicate everything that he does. They start booking marathons and things like that. And he says that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's really good. But he then encourages all of us to strive to accomplish the impossible in our own lives. We've got completely different circumstances. If we try and replicate someone else's life and try to be just like them, we'll find that it's pretty near impossible. Me, for example, I grew up in a great family, a family who loved me, a very faithful family, strong family. I've never had the experiences that, say, David Goggins has had. I've had to become and work on my own trials that were completely separate from David Goggins. What we have to understand here is that there are certain traits and capacities that we cannot reach because we do not have the experience that allows us to make it. In so many ways, I think we need to focus less on trying to become the person that we look up to, and more so we need to try and study them. Study the things that we like. Why do we actually have this attraction to David Goggins? What is it actually? What attribute does he have that I'm seeking for in my own life, that my spirit is just longing for? What is it that my soul is hungering? As a missionary, and I'll kind of go back to the role model of Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter if you believe in him or not, right? But we had an activity that pretty much every missionary participated in my mission, and it was called Christ-like attributes. So I believe there were 6 attributes that essentially the leaders of my church had kind of separated and analyzed and identified for the sake of us as missionaries to study and to try to acquire in our own lives. I mean, of course, eventually we want to try and acquire all those attributes, right? We want to try and become very well-rounded in all aspects of life, right? We want to become the masters of all things. But you'll find that at different times in your life, you actually need different things more than other things. Like, For example, charity or humility. In fact, I would go off and I would say that the first thing that anybody needs is humility. In fact, I'd say that humility is the number one attribute that most of our role models lack, because it's so easy to get so tied up in the world and all the fame and the fortune and just the attention of everything, and completely forget our dependence on God, or the weaknesses that we have. What lack I yet, right? It's so easy to forget those things when you have mostly everything else that your carnal mind desires. If I don't have to think about where my next meal is going to come from, or if I don't have to think about how I'm going to make my next dollar, any situation like that is a very dangerous situation, because then you start to forget your dependency on the Lord. That's where role models become dangerous. Role models only take you so far. And you're going to find that in this generation where everybody's competing for your attention, everybody's trying to buy your attention, you're going to find that there's a lot of people who are trying so hard to be the exact same person that they look up to. I'm sorry, but the seemingly infinite number of Taylor Swift clones that I'm seeing here today, it's only going to get worse. As long as these kids, their parents are buying them tickets to go see Taylor Swift sing or perform, as long as that's going to happen, and as long as they keep pumping out movies about Taylor Swift and putting out more music about more breakups, people are only going to increasingly become more and more obsessed. It's like the craziest anomaly I've ever experienced in my whole entire life. Seeing that someone will drop everything and spend like seemingly their whole entire life savings to travel across the country just to hear Taylor Swift sing. And I'm not saying that liking certain artists or certain role models and trying to support them is a bad thing, but when it becomes an obsession, then it is no different than idol worship. When you are in a social situation and all you can think and talk about is Taylor Swift, if that is the conversation that carries your whole entire persona, you can't look at that or hear anything from those people and not think, what is going on? Why is this being considered normal right here today? Why are we just giving this a pass and acknowledging and participating in the same behaviors? When you see things like that and you find that you aren't questioning the why as to why everybody is downright worshiping a certain person, I don't know. I just think you need to question those things, right? My hopes and my goals with this video, even though it is long and mostly unedited, kind of raw, I want you guys to really take the value that came from it, whatever value you found. I know I just speak a whole lot of psycho mumble, and that's not what I aim to do. It just ends up happening. I hope that you're able to find some value, and that maybe in some senses you'll find that there are things that you need to improve. Like, what's the worth of trying to become a better person if you have nothing to improve in your life, right? If you don't watch a video about self-improvement and you don't find anything to improve in your life, then something's clearly wrong. Anyways, I hope you guys liked the video, you enjoyed it, and if you haven't subscribed already, I would just recommend that you do, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of my future videos. I appreciate you guys all so much. There's been so much awesome support from you guys, and I truly do appreciate it. Anyways, I don't want to hold you guys up any longer, and I'll see you guys in the next video.